The discussion part, can you brief us on that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
So we have our agenda. Can you all see the screen?
No, I'm super blind.
Well,
Oh, I can see it now. Yeah, I can see
can you
it.
turn
Right
it so they can see?
Ask the shortest man.
Oh, sorry. Here, we have this. You mind? So the first item, we're going to go over the exercises, and we're going to kind of put the timeline together. Yes, thank you. And we're going to do a recap. Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. We're going to talk about the water management options, and we're going to we'll talk about next steps. So let's get into it. So, and this is a recap. So for those of you that weren't here last time, this is we've been showing this slide. This is the bigger timeline, I guess you could say. Most of the regions in the state are on number 2 right now. Like everyone is thinking about who is best suited to do the work. We've done number 1, which was last month. What I want to say is Region 4 is really not behind. You're exactly on point. The next exercise, after we build off 1 and 2, we're going to really start thinking about, well, how do we actually do this from a legislative perspective? Do we need to have we're going to have like attorneys present so we could actually talk about what legislative shifts would need to occur in order to do the watershed governance work that this region wants to do. Okay? So the how is really, we can assess where we're at after today, but like the how could potentially be our next meeting.
Would be counsel from OCD or counsel from somewhere else?
We have legal counsel from our consultants and.
Oh, good. Okay.
Yeah. So then if we go to the next, so this is kind of where we're going then. So we're in this November to January where each region is coming up with a provisional recommendation. And we're saying provisional because we want to make sure there's enough time in the beginning of the year, beginning to mid of next year, to kind of engage the right regional stakeholders and the public about the decision. And at each council meeting, we're going to present. So the council also has to be making a decision about how to manage watershed, or how to do watershed management from the statewide level.
When does that decision happen?
So it'll probably happen in May. That's the goal. But they want to use the provisional recommendations that the regions present to them to kind of decide, well, what's the best thing the state should do? So you all have an opportunity to present to the council in January and in March what the provisional recommendations will be. And
Personally?
Then, say again?
Personally or through your project?
I mean, it depends. I guess if you wanted to show up, you could do it. You could present it. But I think we're still trying to figure out, what does that presentation look like? Are we going to deliver it, or it's probably going to be a document that we'll create for the council as a feedback, a regional feedback document. Yeah. So then by May, that is kind of when, if we need to take legislative action, we want to be able to know what we need to do by June at the end of the legislature, so then we can start we would create a strategy. And it would be a statewide strategy that the state will help the regions to work together to figure out, to prepare for 2022, if legislation is needed. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so you're looking for the House side to pass basically, I guess, in one of the codes, probably the water code or the.
Really, it's if we need. I think we're kind of at that point now where we're deciding, or we're determining if we need legislative action, and that will be based off of the recommendations that you all provide. What we'll have, there's going to have to be alignment from the regional perspective and the state perspective. So. And so you all know, LWI's team is going to be working with all the watershed coordinators in December, early December, to have a visioning session and to just kind of get everyone on board, and just to we're gonna think through a strategy together, so then they can come back to you all and to like present options.
Okay.
Okay. So we're gonna go into the recap. I'm gonna be kind of pulling from this sheet. I don't know if you all have it, but it is the meeting notes summary from the last exercise. So this probably looks familiar from the last time. These are general themes that that are occurring across the state of Louisiana. We have root causes of like flood risk root causes, meaning like why is this occurring in our state? Why do we have such terrible flood risk from the riverine, from the pluvial, which is the extreme precipitation, and then obviously coastal. And then we talked about potential solutions. So, but then with Region 4, these are the ones so we did an analysis kind of from the meeting notes. So I'm not gonna go through each thing, but I'll just say, for number 1, the flood risk concern, the region does not have a formal process for coordinating across political boundaries. So I did 3 diagrams like this, and what we're gonna talk about is the green, the potential solutions, and this is all coming from you all. So the next one, the region needs updated data on flood risk maps that accurately portray and communicate flood risk to a broad audience. The third, the region has allowed development that has impaired the natural functions of floodplains. And then I kind of want to, these are all the solutions, all the green boxes, 1, 2, 3, they're all here. And I kind of want to discuss to make sure that this is on point with what you all talked about last time. So if you want to just take a moment to read these, and we can discuss a little bit.
Apolitical bolded, or is that
All right, where do you see that? Let's see. Yeah. And that's really coming from what you said last time to like, we need an entity that is not affected by governing shifts, which I think is that's
not
a big.
affected by Republican, Democratic either?
Right. It's there for a specific purpose. It's unaffected by political shifts. So for those of you on the phone, I'm going to read them out loud. So develop a regional pool of funds for pre-disaster planning and watershed projects. Create an apolitical clearinghouse to streamline efforts associated with different revenue sources for watershed planning and coordination. Form partnerships with private, public, and academic institutions to pool resources for coordinated data management. Create a regional data repository and mechanism to communicate and educate the public on true flood risk. Preserve land within the watershed with conservation easements or servitudes and install educational signage at select sites. Create a watershed plan that designates areas for floodwater retention, detention, floodwater discharge, development, and preservation. So does anyone have comments? Like, is this, we want to make sure this is reflecting what your feedback properly.
For Kashada and for Cameron, this is stuff that we've nugged through last month. That we had probably, I don't know, 10 different things to not choose from, but to kind of guide our conversation. And this is what we kind of landed on. And this was kind of based on around the intent of the collective we discussed last time. I have a good, decent idea what Cameron's looking for. So this is stuff we submitted on behalf of I'd love to know what y'all's thoughts are, if y'all want to change anything or.
Yeah, for good? So I'm going to come back to this because I just want to show you this first. So these are kind of broad, like this is what the work, so the point is that these solutions are what the work could be for your watershed coalition or your governing entity. So I guess the point of this exercise is we're going to take these potential solutions and have a discussion about who do you think is best suited. Are there existing entities within the region that could do this work? And if not, well, how could we create a hybrid mechanism or a new entity to do this work?
Want us to discuss now?
Well, we're going to get there,
Okay.
but I'm going to show you, for the things that we discussed, like if this region wanted to create a watershed plan, like the items of the star require authority. And so that the items that require authority would most likely need to have a legislative action. Yeah, exactly.
Or a special assessment district.
Exactly. Yep. And I think most of the potential solutions provide project funding, so that the items that you all want to do seem to will require authority. So I want to just this question. I have a question here. That.
Can you go back?
Yes.
Yeah. Who thought up the stuff on the right side in green? Did we think that up, or did it?
So I think this is more coming from CSRS.
Who's that? I'm sorry.
They're one of our consultants that's thinking about regional coordination and regional watershed management. Evelyn, did you have anything that you wanted to say about this slide?
I mean, I think I just kind of want to reiterate to the group that we want to be as specific as we can in kind of answering the questions of what specific authorities, the coalition would need to get the work done that we see as the biggest need in this area. So, I may ask kind of prying questions as we get further into this, but the reason is we want to be able to make sure that we are actually all agreeing and saying the same thing. And I just don't want there to be kind of confusion at the end of the exercise. So thank you.
Well, here, I'll just tell you that's Miss Evelyn.
Yeah, that's Evelyn.
Okay, so I just want to tell you what I'm thinking, and not to act like the crazy uncle here, but I'll tell you right now, there's zero support in Beauregard Parish for zoning. And, Alan's not here, and I got cows in Allen Parish right now, so I'll speak on behalf of them. They don't even have a subdivision ordinance. You know what I mean? So I think we need to try to hit singles at this point instead of trying to hit a grand slam of getting two parishes to adopt zoning. Because I wish Beauregard Parish would adopt zoning. I told them it'd be relatively easy. Just make everything like residential and ag, and then spot zone stuff you need to. But there's no support for that.
It's interesting because we think about it would be better if it were grassroots. It'd be much better if it were bottom up. I don't want to be the big government guy that comes in and says the state's going to have to mandate this, or this new regional coalition that could be endowed with this authority could be the one to do that, because God knows that regulations in Caddo don't need to look like what they do in Cameron, and this region consists of both.
I know. So we got to, what I was going to say is we need to lead about, I want to discuss now about editing this slide, because I don't want this slide to go hardly anywhere, because I don't want the House of Representatives or whatever, or I'm sorry, the legislature, to start thinking about pushing development stuff down the parish. I mean, power needs to be vested at the lowest level possible to be efficient. So that's my thoughts from Beauregard Parish.
No zoning in Cameron either, and they'll never get that adopted down there.
You have subdivision ordinances?
Through the coastal zone management, we do the subdivisions. We do it like that, okay?
So the first one's awesome, because we need money to operate, right? So there may be something where we can do, I could definitely see that working cross parish lines if we had like a special assessment district, a mill or something like that, 1 mill.
Let me ask you this then, for the second one, which seems to be where there's an issue, creating consistency and higher standards, so you feel like that would be more of an educational component for this coalition
Yes.
rather than adopting and enforcing?
Thank you. That's more of an outreach educational thing,
Okay.
I think. And
That's a big
it may be
difference.
some coordination between floodplain managers.
Hmm.
Because our floodplain managers, he very well may be picking up 10 on the side of the road right now, you know, I don't know. Everybody's busy. There's just not have and the have-nots.
So, Brad, if we may want to edit that second one instead of creating consistency and higher standards, or you can leave that but just add through education and outreach or something.
Yeah. And then delete that stuff to the right. I don't want
Is-
certain people to see that.
There's
right there.
two of us kind of talking. Do you guys are y'all on the same page, or do y'all feel differently? Do you feel like we need a stronger arm?
Well, I
to
do.
make this happen?
I mean, I do feel in certain areas like Cameron, I mean, we need to be developing higher standards. Right now, we do the minimal. And, you know, the residents there, as far as like the BFE +1, Calcasieu has, I think, +2 now. Okay. So some parishes already
For
have
what, for pad or
+2.
for slab?
Yeah.
Is it pad or
It's
slab?
first floor elevation.
There's 5 elements the Calcasieu builds on. It's like center line of the road in front of them. It's
Or manhole,
watermark
yeah.
study. There's 5 different things. Closest manhole.
Yeah, and that's,
1 foot above the 105.
and I'm for that, and it makes super great sense. And we, you know, in the long term, it's gonna help people not flood and improve commerce, et cetera. But my thing I'm scared of is I don't want the state to come in and tell Beauregard that you have to, you know, I don't wanna give too much rope.
What about
I
one
guess.
level closer to the local, not the state, but the coalition? Still not good?
That's gonna be hard too,
Okay.
man. I just don't,
I'm just asking. I'm playing devil's advocate.
I don't know. I mean, I would be for it, but I just don't see that. I don't see that happening, and because the parishes would have to, so the legislative body of the parishes would have to opt into that, though, right?
I think the legislature would have to give the authority to the coalition, and then the coalition could just do it.
So yeah. So the legislative body of the state can make the legislative body, aka the police jury of the parishes, basically force them into some kind of regional developmental code, right?
I'm saying if they designate the coalition of this region with that authority, then that authority would be given to the coalition to put it on every parish within that region, or pieces of the parish within that region.
Excuse me, can you guys try to talk into the microphone so that people on the phone can hear better?
Sorry.
So anyway, I was just
Stand on my
saying, you know,
Thank you.
the higher standards are going to be very different across the board.
Oh,
They
yeah.
are. I don't necessarily think we're going to
Yeah.
achieve consistency, but I think the goal of this is for each area in the region to ultimately adopt some sort of higher standards. Now, again, what works in one parish doesn't work in another parish, so can it be consistent? I don't know, but maybe consistent in the sense that everyone goes up a notch, if you will. So some sort of improvement across the board, but not necessarily, we don't end up in the same standards. It's just not going to work.
There's got to be a way to word this to where it facilitates cooperation. You know, I just don't know. You're pretty smart. How do you think they'll word that?
Could we say at a minimum through education and
Just
outreach?
maybe
then?
just facilitate higher
If
standards.
possible.
Facilitate higher
We
standards.
got a comment from Mr. Free.
This meeting is being recorded.
You have to have a minimum set by the state.
That sounds real good. So what's an example like of a minimum, like?
A freeboard.
You mentioned earlier that you didn't want the state to come and tell you what to do.
Yeah.
But you're doing it every day with your water system, your drinking water.
Right. Yeah.
You have to meet. You can set up,
Okay.
so it could be either fee plus one. That's your minimum set. Every ordinance that you pass must have one.
Yeah. That's not a bad idea. The minimum standard stuff.
But
Yeah.
that's coming from the state and not from the coalition, so it's.
Yeah.
You feel like that's better if it's statewide rather than by coalition?
I don't want to bog us down with
Right.
this one thing, you know what
I mean, but I
And
think
don't
it's
wanna-
important though.
Yeah,
I do.
mean,
It's good to, to all be on the same page. And y'all, I think zoning is a different beast though, I think, than, you know what I'm talking about,
Yes,
like
ma'am.
the politics. But I think floodplain management, it just, there's a little bit more sense to it that you can make it a little bit more palatable politically, because everyone agree, you want to build smarter, better. Telling someone where they can build is a little different. So, you know what I mean? But telling them to build so you don't flood, we can make that argument. But so I think we look at it from more of a floodplain regulation than a zoning and.
Yeah, and that's really, I don't think that'd be, I should have made the bog down comment, because I was really not that difficult to do. I mean, when we passed a resolution, we found a friendly state rep and get them to front it, at the, submit the bill in January, really. I mean, it's not, and they'll start discussing it. Can you go back to that slide that we're arguing
Yeah.
about? Yeah. Can that reflect to say what he was saying about statewide minimum floodplain standard or something, or developmental standards? I think
State
that'd be
creates
better.
minimum higher standards?
Minimum standard state guidance or something along, I don't know, somebody else, I didn't even go to, look, I don't even have an associate degree. I failed out of McNeese in one semester, so somebody else that's smarter than me should help me out with this part.
Well, okay.
And look, Brad, we could update this,
Right.
At the end of it and make sure we get it.
Yeah,
kind
this-
of go back and think about this a little bit.
Let's yeah, I think it's more important. I think this is great, and I think we need to we're going to transition this discussion to the who, but I think we need to, when we're thinking about our potential solutions, we don't really you guys. I think what you need to decide on: do you want this entity to have that ability to create some type of regional standards?
I think we already have it. Everybody on this board got appointed by their either political body or by their police jury. So if the police juries are the legislative component of the parishes, there already is some force here, from the people, and all the police juries were elected by the people. So I think we're on the right track.
So I'm going to add it here. Like, if the state created...
I have a comment from the distinguished gentleman from Rapides.
Thanks, man. Using gentlemen liberally there. I appreciate it. We kind of get to the point where, and I agree, the parishes have the authority to do this right now. We're in this spot because they haven't. And so I think the question that the state's coming with is, even if it is a state minimum, who is doing that enforcement to make sure that it's actually done? And that's where it's been missing from parish to parish, even the ones that have adopted the NFIP. So the purpose of the potential purpose, let me say it that way, for the coalition is to have equal implementation, I'm going to put air quotes around that, from parish to parish, to make sure that this is done across jurisdictional boundaries, so that Rapides, we're not the rebel and we say, forget it, we're not doing any of that stuff, I don't care what the state law is, and we're dumping our water, in a bad way to the folks downstream from us.
How do we package that like in a bullet point on a slide, though? There's got to be a good way to do this.
But that the way he had it will do that. It just, the only thing we peel off is that it sounds like we want the state to make the minimum, and then the region to still be able to create some consistency through enforcement.
We're gonna have to do all the thinking for the state, though. It's gonna be a resolution coming from us to some state rep, probably, and that's how that's gonna happen, I would think.
Yeah, well, they're going to make the recommendation through the council. I mean, so this whole thing will have statewide legs already by the time it comes back through the staff to the council to the legislature.
Just not to be Debbie Downing here, but the Office of Water Management, we've already discussed this. I mean, this is Governor John Bell Edwards. I love him, voted for him twice, but this is his appointees. I mean, I don't even know, no offense, but I don't even know of anybody outside of his circle that's on that council. You know what I mean? That's just the way it is. And so what he's talking about is going to come from the legislature side, which the two are not, you know what I mean? There's already some,
I think.
see what I'm getting at here?
Yeah, and I think.
There's got to be a coordinated look at this from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we may be the entity that have to step up to provide the solution. Basically, we have to give a resolution to the council and to a representative at the same time so that all this becomes a law and gets signed by the governor.
I think it could be a part of your provisional recommendation too, to just the whole picture. You have a regional, you could also give a recommendation to the state, and they're gonna, because they need to figure out what they're doing from a long-term watershed management.
If the council comes up with this and gives it to, the Speaker of the House, you know, I don't know what their relationship is between the council for water management and the Speaker of the House. But our relationship may be better with the Speaker, or Ryan down in Cameron, you know, Dwight and whatever we represent. Our relationship's going to be better with our local reps than it is. You see what I'm saying? Than what the council's relationship will be with the Speaker of the House. Is all I'm saying.
So I think this is a great conversation, and I think it's probably going to be better for the next exercise when we're thinking about how and like implementation.
Yep.
Like, so that's great. So we're going to pivot back to, to thinking about like who's going to actually do this work in Region 4. And has anyone had a chance to look at the guidebook? I know you probably a little bit. It's there's like it's long, it's kind of long, but it's because it has all the regions in it. But Region 4 is probably like 15 pages, and it has a list. I know Jennifer's seen it. It has a list of the existing entities that work in watershed management already, and it's a lot. So this table is it's pulled from that governance guidebook, and it's really, we start to think it's analyzing the geography that these existing entities can work in, and it's also analyzing the authority that they have to do different types of work. So this is kind of just a snapshot of what that, like the different types of, the different levels of government. We have the parish and municipal governing authorities, planning and development districts, levee districts, water conservation districts, and the gravity drainage districts, and then navigation districts are all listed in there. So,
Are you talking about soil and water conservation?
yes.
Oh.
So, I don't know if you have it in front of you, but
We do. It's page
Okay.
37 and 38.
okay.
Oh. 38.
So, and I guess the intention with this is kind of to so you all can have an inventory of who's already kind of working in this arena, in across the state and in your region, and to think. I guess the question that we want to start thinking about is one of these entities better suited to do watershed management in Region 4,
As opposed to us?
as opposed to maybe creating a new entity.
Oh.
Or, you know, thinking about, yeah, I guess that's the main question. And I'll say that, like the planning and development districts, for example, like this next slide kind of shows you the geography. The higher the circle, the more geography that.
Oh, that's cool.
You know what I
made that
mean?
slide. Did you make that?
I did not make it, but I tried to tailor it to your region. So you'll see the parishes and local governing authorities, they have the most authority, and I'll show you, if you look at this slide, you'll see all these circles. This is what the parishes, and this is you know, high level. Okay, so these are the different items that the parish and municipal governing authorities could potentially do. But they don't have a lot of geography, right? They're limited to their jurisdiction. So that's what this dark blue bubble shows here. Okay? And then we took a conservation, the Rapides Soil and Water Conservation District. Again, maybe they have a little bit more geography because it's not just, it would be the whole parish as opposed to just a municipality.
And I can help with this. So I'm on the board. I'm on the board for Calcasieu Soil and Water Conservation District.
Cool. Okay.
We had a meeting Wednesday, and I can tell you exactly what we can and can't do.
Okay. Cool.
And what I think that even if we're authorized to do certain things, whether we're really going to do them or not.
Okay.
So,
So someone like, but if you go to like a navigation district or the Imperial Calcasieu Regional Planning and Development Commission, you'll see that they have, they represent more of the region. So that's kind of what we need to be thinking about, like who is best suited to work across the geography, but also, and then if you do choose an existing entity, what we need to think about, like what we're going to eventually get to is, are they authorized to do the work that you all want them to do? Which is what we just were, the potential solutions.
is anybody in here familiar with the Imperial Calcasieu? Okay, so because that's what you do for Rapide, right?
Not really. We're kind of sister agencies, but not really.
Can you just take a moment and explain like what the mission of that thing is?
Yeah, so planning and development districts are meant to, it's more economic development than anything, but each of them have kind of taken their own paths. So they're all very different for the different regions across Louisiana. MCAL just got rebooted not too long ago with a new executive director, Mr. Mike Oye, who's fantastic. Let me explain it this way. There's a couple of things that I think will bring us back to what Brad's trying to say. Take the parish and local governing authorities. A ton of authority, but not much geography. So if you pick an entity like that to do this work, then we're going to have an amendment to their governing authority to allow them more geography, right? Whereas if you took the Imperial Calcasieu Planning and Development Commission, where they cover a large region, but they don't have much authority. They're more planning, and they're not even really regulatory in almost any way. They do a SEDS every year, I believe. I don't even remember what that stands for. Who knows that? Economic Development Strategy, Community Economic Development Strategy. So they've got the geography, or a lot of the geography. They would still have to expand to cover this region because it's massive. But they would also need legal authority to do regulation and enforcement on a larger level. So that's kind of what he's getting at with this. Like, no matter who you pick, if you pick somebody existing,
There's a lot of work.
There's got to be some change.
Well, yeah, and
Nobody fits the bill.
I didn't want to hijack the conversation.
Thank
but
you,
I'll
I
tell
agree.
and I'm not thinking this, but I've been knowing this. There ain't nobody there that's doing it right now. We have to form something as a region. That's my.
I'm sorry, you asked earlier about the Region 5. Was this a good place to kind
Yeah,
of present that?
totally.
So Region 5 was looking at it as a hybrid, and there's three different, I'm going to say three different levels of not authority, three different levels to it. Let me just say it that way. You've got an overall decision-making body, a board, like this coalition. When this becomes permanent, assuming that it will, then you've got a decision-making body that will be doing, decisions monthly, quarterly, whatever. But then you've also may have a technical advisory committee underneath that, made up of engineers from maybe everybody on this list from page 37 and 38 are represented from all of them, right? But then you also have the staff for this doing the work day to day.
Which is Edward and.
Right now for the provisional stuff, right? But how does that work moving forward? So for Region 5, they said, well, we might need a new body to make those decisions because APC has representation across a lot of the region, but they don't pick up Rapides. They don't pick up some of the other ones. So it may need to be a new board. So that top level, they may or may not go with a technical advisory committee similar to the MPO structure, but who's going to do the staffing and the day-to-day work? And so for them, they thought of a hybrid being there may need to be a new board. This is some of the conversation happened after we voted too. A new board making the decisions, but the staff could be a conglomeration of APC, UL, and the
Test for
Test for
I'm
Million
sorry,
Freshwater
I'm not super
District.
great with acronyms.
Acadiana Planning Commission.
Okay.
So
And
they're-
University of Louisiana Lafayette.
yes.
Okay.
Yep.
I still call them USL.
Got it. And then the third one for that being the Tesh Vermilion Freshwater District, because they do some of the technical work, they just don't have the broad geography
I love that
that some of the
technical
others do.
advisory board idea. But see, we're already doing a board function right now. I mean, for really to turn this into a real thing, all the police juries just have to.
No, because we don't have any staff. We have nobody to do the project. So
Right.
it takes a huge effort to have the capacity. I mean, so I have a question on that.
Yeah.
The three on the staff level, how are y'all going to divvy up grant projects or projects in general?
Probably more than likely through APC. Now,
So
I
they
don't
would
know.
they would be the ones, they would be the sub-grantees on the agreements.
Possibly, if they were given that authority for the whole region, yes. But then you have the modeling aspect of it, where they look at funneling more of that work possibly through UL. And again, all of this is fluid, could change by tomorrow. And then again, not knowing all the ins and outs of the Tetra Million Freshwater District, they have some technical capability that I'm not aware of, but they may be a good team player for either side of it. Maybe some of the modeling, maybe some of the grant work.
That region's set up different, so who? Like,
Absolutely.
Okay. So I'll tell you what I like about our region. I think that Pat Forbes and all them really like, I think they like the fact that the police juries are the ones that put all of us on the steering committee. Just because it reflects the will of the people versus whoever's clucked up with whoever in some obscure thing that I've never heard of. You know what I mean? I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No, I agree. That's one of the things that I'd like to see across each region is that there's some, obviously you want representation across the whole coalition region, right?
You don't have to be the will of the people.
Right. You don't. If MCAL was selected to do it, that'd be kind of crazy because their board's only made up of people from that southern region, right? Caddo and Sabine and some of the others may not have any representation on it. So, but yeah, as far as the decision-making body, but also think about who's going to be informing this board. Let's say it's us. Say this group becomes the permanent group. How are we making decisions? Like, who's going to be feeding us that data? Who's the staff for it?
Because we're going to lose you at some point, right?
I mean, we're going to support you.
And Jennifer makes a good point. I mean, I'm not familiar with the staff functions like Jennifer
That's
is.
the huge piece of this.
It
I
is.
think the board, I think that's kind of the easy thing. It's going to be what entity is going to be responsible for implementing this watershed initiative and obtaining the funds that they're going to be in charge of receiving the funds and implementing projects and doing all the work. Not a single entity that is up there can do any of that. And so it's an issue because we have it currently set inside of our police juries. That's how we do this work.
Yeah.
And so
What about these like Edward and people like that, like people coming
they're
in?
consultants.
I know, but what about consultants doing
They
the
can
work?
only do it to a certain degree because you have to have, finance departments and the whole 9 yards. They can't do anything on our behalf, internally. So.
They can or they just don't?
No, they can't. They can't cut our checks. They can't manage our projects. They can't review our agreements. And, we have to have legal counsel. You've got to have a finance director. You got to have an internal auditor. You've got to have the whole shebang.
Yeah, but, okay. That doesn't sound impossible to me.
Not impossible, but you're going to have to create it. And that's the point of this.
Okay. So it's not a no.
No, nothing's a no.
Absolutely not.
I'm just trying to.
But that's the hard part.
I'm just trying to hit our, as a group, I'm just trying to hit our left and right limits. You know what I mean? Try to just figure out where those are. Now, I know we'll find a good solution somewhere in the middle.
You're essentially going to create a body that's almost as powerful, if not more powerful, than a police jury.
Yeah, heck yeah.
So,
That's why I want to be
but
careful of.
think how huge these entities are, and so it's not this little. This is not the board is the easy part, in my opinion. I think you've got people who are interested in serving on the board. We've got that. It's going to be the makeup and like the real organization behind it.
You're going to be critical and you're going to be key in just helping us guide on the staff function part, like on what to do and what not to do. I know you got enough stuff to do now, but maybe you have, I mean, I don't have the knowledge on staff function stuff. There's people in this room that, I mean, all y'all have like jobs, I run cows in old rice field, you know what I mean? That's what I do for a living, so.
It's all going to depend on what y'all come up with, and then we work backwards from there, figuring out how we make it happen.
So, do we want to talk about potential entities in the region now? That's kind of where this is going. If you feel like do you want us to talk about specific entities that could potentially be a part of this hybrid?
Let me do the reciprocal. Do y'all know of any entities that would be good to manage this? Can y'all think of any current entities that would be good to manage our region?
I almost feel like it's going to for this region. I feel like it may have to be something new. And again, I don't know all of these entities on pages 37 and 38, so y'all please step in and straighten me out. But if you you may have folks that are great at grant management, which is going to be a big part of this, but they may not know jack squat about floodplain management or how drainage basins work, right? Or the importance of blowing up beaver dams, you know. But then you've got some of these
We're
gravity
experts.
drainage districts, or gravity drainage districts that know a ton about this stuff, but they may not do much for going after grants.
Right.
So it's like each entity has a little piece of it, and you
Right.
can't just smash every one of these together, or can you? I don't know. I almost feel like for this region, new is going to be the way to go, which is
agree.
part of the reason we have Calcasieu Parish stepping up to be the fiscal agent here. Like if you
help out,
had somebody
yeah.
that was
Because we
in
didn't
that
have
role.
anybody,
right?
yeah.
If you had somebody in that role already, or somebody that could fulfill that role, they probably would be the fiscal agent
And
for this entity. now.
MCAL compared to APC and Matt's group, I mean, they're very small, and so, and again, they, you know, they're just a really small group. They're, I think, smaller than my little grant section. So that's where, I mean, I think a lot of areas are looking towards their regional planning commissions. Just for us, MCAL is a pretty small entity.
Now, can I make a quick plug for them? Because they are rebooting and they've got some great leadership now. If they came to this body and pitched to say, look, if you guys chose us, here's how we would staff it, here's what we do to serve you guys, is that something you would consider?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I think we would just have to kick it up to the state, though, on the project level. Would this entity ultimately be the subrecipient on these grant funds? Because, you know, the Federal Register notice does not seem to want to give these CDBG MIT monies to brand spanking new entities. So I would just want to kick that up to the state and see if we were to create a brand new entity who's had no history or capacity to do federal programs, is that going to hinder our region in actually being able to have those federal funds obligated to us on the basis of the way the Federal Register notice is written? So we've
We wanna make
got
sure we
some
get
questions
paid.
because, yeah, we want to make sure we get paid so we can come up with the best idea ever. But if everyone's green and they've not done this before as an entity, doesn't matter if we staff it with full experience, the entity itself is brand new and not experienced, and it states it wants established people with experience with CDBG funds. So how do we connect, how do we bridge that gap?
Okay, so what about the board executing board functions? You know, being taking information and coming out with some in goes information, out goes output. But like, what about what you were saying about the technical advisory? I think maybe you were saying that technical advisory committee. So what if all the planning commissions and levy boards and all this stuff were offered seats on like a planning or a technical advisory committee? Almost kind of similar to how the zoning works, right? So the police area is in charge of zoning, but the police area got a zoning commission almost.
Yeah, that runs the technical and legal traps before it gets to them.
Because I don't know, maybe we don't need to be bogging down with some of that stuff. Maybe that's for somebody else to nug through. I don't know. It's just an idea. Yes, sir. Please.
Mr. Alex Guillory.
I want to offer something for y'all to think about. Last summer, probably I think before the steering committees were even formed, LWI had a summit in Lafayette, and they invited officials from all across the United States. One of the guys that showed up was a guy named Tim Dolan, maybe? Tim Caters from Colorado Department of Local Affairs. They went through this entire program following, I think, some 2011 or 2012 floods on devastating. But they received the same type of dollars that you're receiving, and they had to figure out the same way to receive and manage these funds. They elected, I'm not saying the whole region, but Tim was there to describe his geographic area. They formed nonprofit organizations. Jennifer may be able to speak to this better than I, but I think it's easier for the federal government to give money through HUD to a nonprofit organization than to some existing government. That may be wrong. I don't know. You may want to look that up. That was the impression I got from Tim Caters, however. Now that you are all starting to see the challenges that you're faced with, I know because I visited with Tim, personally had lunch with him since he was in Lafayette. He would probably entertain a discussion with all of y'all to answer y'all's questions and talk about his experiences. And I would recommend you do that, because he's very,
What's his name?
Tim Caters. I can forward all y'all his information.
You know-
Colorado Department of Local Affairs.
I invited Joey Bro to this. I mean, we already have organizations statewide to funnel money through. The Soil and Water Conservation Districts is like an asset.
I think though, Jacob, you're seeing that you're gonna run up against missions of all of these different.
I know, and that's why I was asking about the mission.
The missions of all of these existing entities, for some reason, they're not going, like, the best example I've seen, Tetra Million Freshwater District, that is a parish boundary entity, 3 parishes in South Louisiana. It's not watershed. It's not based on the boundary of the watershed. I think that's where this is going, in my opinion, but that's I'm simply offering the nonprofit idea, and I think Tim Caters would entertain a discussion.
That's a really good idea. Can we take a 5-minute break?
Absolutely.
Okay, it's 10:55. We'll start back at 11 if you are good with that.
Hey y'all, this is Evelyn, just on the phone line here. I just want to make sure to share something that I'm aware of. You know, I think that Tim did a great job explaining what they did in Colorado, and I think we really do need to, you know, understand what were the benefits of that, but also what were the drawbacks. I mean, one thing I would put to y'all is, you know, at this point, you don't have to think necessarily inside the box of what is an entity's currently prescribed geographical boundaries, because part of the question that I think we're asking this group right now is, would you need a different boundary to do the work that you have to do? And so you can answer that in that question. You know, I mean, I think that's part of what Region 5 was looking at when they looked at kind of having a co-management structure. They're not necessarily tied into one set boundary that goes with one of those entities, right? I think they're looking at still how to deal with the whole watershed together. But one other thing I would put to y'all is, you know, I don't know that I would necessarily agree with the characterization that it's easier or better to grant federal funds to a nonprofit. I think that there definitely are some sizable challenges that go with that model. So I just want to make sure to flag that for y'all.
Thanks, Evelyn. I was actually going to follow up with that. I mean, governments are nonprofits too. We're governmental nonprofits, so.
For those of you on the phone, we're just taking a 5-minute break.
No, unless the state goes to HUD and says, look.
You've got a good organization, you can't get money.
You can't get money.
Huh? Thanks. Trying.
The whole idea is to have a whole separate division dedicated to this, and we started it with that.
Oh, you're gonna go back to the.
Totally been working on grants for elevations and buyouts, but the idea is to grow that.
Good to see you.
What's up, man? You
For us,
disappeared,
for our
man.
distillation, we go apply for funding, we've got all that in place. How would somebody from Caddo, fill or Webster?
Don't worry, I've been on Zoom. I don't think I'll make another one.
Which you could have members from all these.
Guys might know their projects, but they don't know.
Nice to meet you. No problem. Oh, doing okay. Just one day at a time.
Have
They
people
do,
making
yes.
educated decisions. I can tell you that the
Yeah, I went
president
to the
of
wrong
Walmart.
building. I've been here earlier, but I went to the wrong building. I went to the old meeting place. Yeah. I know.
Let's go to engineers.
Whenever on the- I said, oh, but I met him over there too. He went to the, so I feel better. Yeah. This is a nice place.
Management and stuff and.
About 50 miles. Happy yet coming up?
I did see the bunch of them.
No, I was thinking you were somebody else. It's fine.
I was racking my brain.
I know. I was gonna tell you that a while ago, but you got to talking, so I'm like, oh well, he just think of it.
I was just trying to place it before.
You're like man. Yeah, it gets confusing. Like with Delta, Laura was pretty dry for us over there, but man, Delta don't fall. Yeah, we had about, I mean, the winds wasn't nearly as strong as over here in Lake Charles, don't get me wrong, but must have had about 80-mile-an-hour winds for 5 or 6 hours, and just that constant. I had a lot of, I had 3 acres, I was very fortunate, and, it took a lot of trees down to have the drainage board. Had to call them back up because I had some trees down with Laura, and I called them back up, and they fall in the gullies, and then the gullies started backing up with the rain, so I called them to come, some more trees.
Oh, I can get me a blanket.
Fur one. Need a beanie hat.
I got
trees after Zeta, so I have the this is the same thing.
I've got
How many more minutes we got on this break?
And I have a 400-yard rock range in my backyard. And I don't know, it took me a few hours.
What's the dude's name, Brad?
Not pine trees on both sides of the rock range. I picked up branches from along, and some of them were pretty big tops. I'd take my tractor and pull it in the woods, get them off the tractor. So it was very, lot of work. But I mean, it could have been a heck of a lot worse. At least I have a house. Some of these poor people here in Lake Charles have nothing.
Pray your God
That's just, you can
to
see
come
the,
and speak.
I don't know if you noticed it, but coming in, you can see the effects on the highway starting coming. Those poor people in Canada. Okay, nice to meet you, sir. Be careful. Yeah, so you have a long drive.
know.
Well, I thought it would've been more, really.
What's going on, man?
I would say South Florida.
I wouldn't have parked over there on the other side of that building. I'd be out.
Is the thermostat on?
Yeah.
So I was able to like time it to where I was before the traffic.
I think I'm gonna, got it. You ready? Where's our, who's our, who?
I guess Southwest Alliance now.
Oh, no. No.
We started calling.
Protectionist organization. Think about it, if you got, let's say, I know a perfect example, the Greater Beauregard Chamber of Commerce. Is that what you're talking about? So like, there's a guy on the Greater Beauregard Chamber of Commerce that sells like
Yeah, it's been real rough
trailers
lately.
for a living, like mobile homes.
I had damage with
So if I
Hurricane
was-
Delta.
if I wanted to
I
sell
was
the
very
mobile home
fortunate. Lord,
dealership
I didn't lose
Beauregard
a shingle
Parish,
with
you think
Lord.
that dude's gonna help me?
And then Delta hit me, tore my roof pretty good. So I'm waiting on getting I don't like metal, but I'm 49 years old, and I figure if I
Hope
do
nobody.
and a tornado don't hit me, it might last forever. So this is my second roof I put on since 2005.
I think a private entity's me, but it's like you gotta have a board, somebody like fence to make or somebody too.
I lost some flooring, my car.
I could be on it, but they more of a project manager type people deal.
I agree, 'cause
They
that's
have
what they do
grants
for
on
others.
That's what they
staff.
do.
They have
They know how to
grants.
get grants.
The only
It's
thing
like
in my
mine
house will be
associate.
carpet's
Mine
my
associate
game
will
room
get
after
money.
that. So I'm gonna go with some kind of pro core flooring. It's like vinyl
They're like
flooring.
I said, they do our
and,
projects
it
down there now.
floats.
Like,
I have a brick house, so I have a
they're doing the
concrete
modeling, they're doing,
slab.
they're doing the rock, they're overseeing the rock projects we got going on in the
No, I
Gulf
was just
right now.
telling. I'm
They
just
put the stuff
Stephanie,
together for you. All your projects,
October
all
was
your
horrible.
permits, they pull your
I
permits
lost
for you,
my
and you send them
aunt.
to,
My mama's
Have a board
baby
that's
sister. And
familiarized.
then, a little over 3 weeks later, we buried my mama. We just
you're gonna
buried
have
my
to have
mama
somebody
a
to put all
week,
the
not last
projects
week.
together, and you gotta do the engineering and.
I apologize for not being in touch with y'all. And,
Mr. Baker does
and I'm
that, I
on
mean,
the
'cause they do it
board
all the time for
Region
us on
5 in
projects.
Lafayette, so. And I'm probably gonna miss Thursday
They come
because
to
I have
all
a
of our
root canal
places,
here
really.
again. They didn't finish the root canal
They've been
last
feeding us
week,
for lunch
last week,
every
so I had to
time.
come back,
Vernon Iron, man.
Thursday over here and do it again. So finish it up, so.
Or did, where did he go?
It's been a horrible part of the year.
Brad.
So I'm just kinda lost, really.
I wanted to go, I would've went to Camp Copenhagen if he wouldn't have.
Thank God.
I don't, he been going that long.
Of course, it's very difficult to help with a 3-year-old. I have a.
Edwin, for next time, there's one right in this room. There's two right behind me. I didn't even see them. Went all the way across.
I think it's from like Friday, the coffee. I
Glasses?
Oh no, I was just getting water.
Is it so cool?
Thank you.
They like are not changing fast enough.
Hey, welcome back. We're gonna go ahead and call it back to order, just on the sake of time. We wanna beat the lunch crowd when we get done.
Nice. For those of you on Zoom, we are back. Cool.
I want to kick around one thing before you start. Kick around one thing that came up during the break was, and that may be I try to remember the Zoom participants and not leave them out, but similar to how when I was working on the short-lived Beauregard Parish Gravity Drainage Board, which was overwhelmingly defeated by popular vote. So we had an engineering firm that worked with us, pretty much our right-hand person, that worked everything for us. Studies, material prep, or House Bill 2 grant type stuff. We had an attorney a counsel that helped us with Jay Delafield. He helped us with trying to get the millage, all that set with the State Bond Commission. I just wonder why I mean, what is y'all's thoughts on having like an engineering firm as helping us out instead of necessarily your staff assisting with?
Oh, no, I mean, no doubt you have to have an engineering firm
Yeah.
as part of any project. But there's someone's got to manage the engineering firm and make sure that, you still have to have staff. It's not all
A
consultants.
fiscal agent, right, to kind of funnel it all through in some form.
Well, like a parish or?
I mean,
What if like here's a crazy scenario. What if Edward was our fiscal agent, or is he? Aren't you a fiscal agent right now? Or what's his
She's
job?
No,
coordinator,
so
Calcasieu.
it has to. It's a government
Okay, so good.
body.
So what if Edward was our board's coordinator, and kind of managed whoever we pick for the engineering firm, and then
Because
everything
he
just kinda
doesn't
funneled
work,
through
it
him.
has to be an employee that works for the entity. That's what I'm saying.
Where's that written at?
Well, meaning to sign off on things and to represent the
No,
entity.
he wouldn't sign anything. One of the board would.
I
sign
think
it.
this would be getting in more to the how. So,
got it.
so I don't want to get too far into it,
I
but
hear you.
it can't all be done by consultants. There has to be staff. There has to be okay, let's take OCD, for example. They created an LWI department, but it's a large entity, and they've got people in the background. So Brad's the one showing up here, but there's a whole bunch of people in the background that operate OCD to make, they're paying Brad, they're cutting his checks, they're going to be handling the audits, the monitoring
No,
visits.
I'm well aware of all that. There's other people that work at OCD other than Brad. I wasn't suggesting that. But what I'm suggesting is that like our soil and water secretary, she'll write the check out, that needs to be cut for somebody, and then or one of our employees or whatever, and then me as a board member, I'll come and sign it. Jacob Marceau, you paid. I'm not necessarily, having somebody serving, like, if Edward were serving as our coordinator and coordinating functions with, I don't know, you're right, it's making sausage. Maybe we should talk about that next time. I don't
Well,
want to bog you down.
I think what we could do is, if it seems like we're thinking that a new entity is necessary, right? So we could do a brainstorming session of what.
Oh, we're doing that now.
I know, but we can like, I think we should jot some of this. I mean, we have this slide here that kind of, this could help us with our brainstorming, I guess you could say. So if we have a new entity, so let's take this. This aligns everything that we've been talking about. The items in bold are the ones that really came up last time about uncoordinated planning and project design, inadequate funding for infrastructure, construction, and O&M, and inadequate data. So why don't we start, we could start with this line, and so if this is the root cause, a function that the entity could do is develop and execute a regional watershed plan. They would need authority. Is that something that I'm assuming that is something that you want the region to do, the entity to do, correct? To make a plan, like what you talked about last time is that we need to designate areas in the north that could be for detention, retention.
I mean, I'm not saying that,
right?
I'm not an engineer. I don't want to get in the weeds with that, because
Okay.
I think whoever we hire as our engineer, I mean, I don't want anything to be, because I don't know. We need studies done, and
Right.
Terry can talk about that stuff. I mean, it shouldn't be us deciding necessarily stuff like that, but we're basically
So-
supervising engineering functions and all that across the region to better the region. That's kind of what my thing was.
But
So-
I think as a general concept, yes. I
So
mean,
to
not
have a
getting in
plan.
the weeds, but as a general concept, absolutely, that's what this coalition should be doing, right?
So we want to have a watershed plan, and we want to be able the entity. Would you want to be able to have a plan and then to execute a plan?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't see the point. General Patton said, "What a good plan, violently executed, is better than a perfect plan." Whatever the rest of that is.
Yes. So.
For sure.
Yeah, and I think that plan will really help to kind of paint the picture of all the different priorities in the region. And I think, last time we talked about the preservation, a lot of the having areas designated for preservation, areas designated for development, areas designated for like these parishes, we need to have projects that allow the water to exit faster. So I think that will cover all of that. And then, so if you go to the next one, this is kind of coming back to the standards. And let's just refine this so it makes sense. It's aligned with what we were talking about earlier. We talked about the state creating a minimum. Potentially, the state would create a minimum higher standards.
Oh, yeah.
And then this regional entity, you'd want to have to regulate, right?
I think if you're gonna actually have it do any good and not just be words on paper, I think there has to be some regulation. And we talked a little bit about that in the break. I don't know that you want that being complete top-down state. You want to be a little closer to the local level. And I think the region, because you're operating outside of political boundaries, this regional coalition is probably going to be the best way to do that.
We want it ordained by the state, but we want to help with the formation of it, I guess.
Help it be implemented, right?
Guys like Terry Freelow need to be. Like there needs to be, there needs to be input at the local level to feed the state because they don't know. You know what I mean?
There's two.
You all know, right? You all know the issues of your region.
Yeah,
so
we got smart people on drainage on this, or not.
Not on this side. There are two ways for implementation. I know we're going to talk how later, but just something to be thinking about. There's Iron Glove. This coalition, boom's got the authority. We regulate it. We get out there and every development that comes through, every building permit, we're looking at it. Or you can have this regional coalition that's developed that each parish inside the region could contract with if they want that help for implementation. So if you don't, you can just, if Calcasieu can do it on their own, absolutely, you don't need the help. But you're not mandated to contract with this coalition.
I'm going to tell you right now, Borgard would be interested in contracting with this coalition. Yeah. We need freaking help.
And I bring that up because that's similar to how building code enforcement was done. They adopted the code statewide, but they didn't know how it was going to be enforced. Different entities said, well, we can do enforcement, and now REPC, for instance, we work in 6 different parishes in central Louisiana. We don't have any authority to do that. We do it through contract authority with the individual entities because they ask us to. And so it's not
do that inside
smashing it
Calcasieu
down.
Parish. Like we do it on behalf of other jurisdictions inside Calcasieu.
That's awesome.
So
Very
just
cool.
a thought for how.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be smashed down their throat. Could be somewhat optional.
And
I'm a yes on that one.
Yes.
So and we talked about another thing that came up in Region 5 that I thought was pretty cool. Was that the standards or there could be consistency in standards for types of flood risk, like whether it's coastal, riverine, or these extreme precipitation events. And you all would be able to say, like, these areas, these zones should have the standards for riverine flooding or for
Right. So if we put a standard in place for like VE zone, that wouldn't affect y'all. Y'all don't have VE zone. So you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it could be based off of those like flood zones, and then therefore it would sort of resolve itself out for the northern parishes to not be affected by that.
So I feel compelled to, and really morally obligated to again mention for you to relay back to Pat Forbes and to all those people up there that our resolution. I mean, we still have our resolution for LDAF to be on that commission.
Right.
I mean, this is awesome. If there was a state minimum, whatever, but how do you not have ag representation?
So, the answer to that is because that is a fluid organization. They're trying to figure out how to evolve the council. And I'm so glad that you gave them that suggestion because there's broader, they want broader representation of the agencies that have more expertise.
For sure.
And I think that's part of the longer term decision making that the agencies of LWI are thinking about is like how does the long term watershed management align with what the regions want? And
I apologize to my fellow committee members because I'm gonna blow that horn until it happens. I mean, it's got to happen. I know why. I know the real answer why, but I'm not gonna get into it here.
So, okay, we talked about the floodplain management, inconsistent floodplain management, and like coordinating between floodplain managers of the different parishes in the region. So the function would be creating consistent floodplain and development regulations, which is kind of what we were just talking about with the types of flood risk. I'm going to add that. So I'd say yes to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, have the authority to, but almost sort of like what Matt was saying, if a parish doesn't want to enter into it, can they opt out? Or
Either do it on their own or contract to
Yeah.
get the buy-in in a sense.
could it be something like that?
You know, everybody thought my idea was stupid in the beginning.
Which one?
Okay, so you know initially when this whole thing, when the Watershed project got thrown out there initially, we thought that this $100 million, that the state was gonna have, the Council on Water Management was gonna have $60 million, and then we thought the rest of it was gonna get split between all the regions, which will give our region $5 million, which would break down to $540,000 per parish in this region. Now, $540,000 wouldn't be a ton of money to Calcasieu, you know. This room is nicer than in our entire, you know, whatever. I was born in Calcasieu, you know, whatever, I love Calcasieu. But $540,000 would make a significant, not only contribution to efforts inside of smaller parishes, but also it also create buy-in. So if there was if Sabine Parish got basically $540,000 from the Watershed Initiative, right? To operate within a framework that we established as a board or as a committee, but at some point in the future decide to opt out, then they don't get that money. You know, so there may be a way to amortize that money, not necessarily as a carrot and a stick type function, but man, I couldn't imagine.
But kind of, yeah.
But I couldn't imagine if I called Brian McReynolds, parish administrator, on the way back home, and he said, "Hey Jake, how's the meeting?" I said, "Great," and I got great news, because we may be getting $250,000 a year to work on gray water infrastructure, which we know for a fact will improve water quality. It'll improve public perception of drainage. There's all this stuff that money will fix. All this stuff. So we had that, but I didn't get booed when I threw this out. Do you even remember this?
Yeah, I do. No, my only comment was to make sure it's worth it to an individual parish to go after $500,000 of CDBG money. So to know what work will come on the back end to obtain it. And so I'm just a little jaded because of how much work I've had to do.
But I'm more of a wave top guy.
So when I see, I'm like, I don't know, you know, 500,000 to, you know.
But does it have to be that much work? Could you not just be? I mean,
you would think it wouldn't have to be that hard, but it's going to be that hard.
But if it's on the political side, we can fix that, right?
No, not political. It's more like the administrative and just the grant process, and it can be an administrative burden.
This is Nicolette on the line. Can I interrupt?
Sure.
Hey, Nicolette.
Hey, I just wanted to make one note on that comment that the CDBG funds have a lot of restrictions and requirements tied to how they're used. So I think one of the other issues with that proposal was that it would have to fund a project in whole. So we couldn't give you partial funding for a partial project. It would have to fund the project from start to finish, and there just aren't that many projects in that range to fund in whole. So I think that was the other issue behind that proposal.
Nicolette, who made that rule?
HUD.
Let's see who's director of
That's
HUD.
a HUD requirement. That's a CDBG requirement. So for this funding source, it has to fund projects in whole. So, and that's a constraint, obviously, and I think that's worth.
The only option would potentially be buyout programs.
And what types of funding maybe the coalition can leverage, and maybe they can, leverage different sources and help, and help fill gaps where certain projects can't get funded in whole.
Okay, so, and remember, I'm the crazy uncle. So Dr. Ben Carson is currently director of HUD. We've all seen him in debates. Do you honestly think if this wasn't explained to Dr. Ben Carson, that he wouldn't authorize? There's a lot of blocks being thrown in front of this, you know what I mean? And really it could just be resolved.
They don't
politically.
care. Look, after Rita, Katrina, Ike, Gustav, there's so many flaws in these federal programs.
Exactly.
Way more.
But
I'm telling you, we have fought on bigger, more logical issues, and they don't care. So
we just got to figure out who they are.
Yeah. Okay.
So, do you think that? So that kind of comes to this part. This next bubble is the entity. Jennifer brought up last time. What we're talking about, this kind of the complicated process of CDBG, and the solution here says, and we're coming back to this apolitical. Create an apolitical clearinghouse to streamline efforts associated with different revenue sources for watershed planning and coordination. Because if this new entity could be taking in revenue from other places too.
For sure.
So I think you want to, if this entity is centralized and streamlining and is a clearinghouse, ideally it would take some of that administrative burden from the parishes. Is that kind of?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because we don't want to give more work to the parishes. Not to say that would happen, but especially if this entity is a clearinghouse for multiple different funding sources. So I'm gonna say that. Where are we? So yes, I think you want to do. This is definitely you. So we want to be able to generate revenue. I guess that's the question. Do you want to be able to generate revenue, borrow money, and select projects?
Have to.
Yeah, you have
You're going to be effective.
Otherwise, you're right. It's words on a piece of paper.
So with that, there's a question that I think you all should talk about. This long-term funding question. So I'm going to read it for those on the phone. So we have, to address this issue, which of the following would you suggest our regional coalition do? Adopt a regional millage or stormwater utility fees to fund watershed projects and long-term operations, maintenance, and data management. B, serve as a conduit for grant funds to support local flood control projects. Coordinate existing water management entities to pool resources for regional projects. And then other, or all of the above.
I vote D. Because I don't know any engineering firms that don't know how to go get money. Y'all? That's what they do. They got contacts in Baton Rouge. I mean.
What would D say for you? Engineering firm?
No. That's just
Rely.
my thoughts. We got to find a better way. I'm not good at the words to convey. I'll give you an example. So Meyer and Associate, Mr. Vernon Meyer, the fence maker, whoever, they're going to go to Baton Rouge and talk to who they got to talk to. If it's got to be, y'all know the deal. I mean, if it's a millage, we'll involve assessors and special assessment districts or whatever. If it's a bond, we'll involve Louisiana, a bond attorney. But the big engineering firms, no offense to the fine firm you're a part of, but they know how to go get money. That's not our problem. Go find the money.
I mean, that kind of works for B as well. I think those are typically going to be grant funds that they're going to find. But I think all of the above for sure. But fees is one of the things I've been kind of tooting the horn on all the other regions too. You think about the size of this region. If there were $100, stormwater utility fee on every permit issued in that entire region. That would generate more than enough funds to adequately run an office. And then, I know it's high, but I'm just giving you, not only to run the office, but also provide matching funds for grants to implement projects. And then between the region generating money and a local gravity drainage district generating whatever millage they have, there may be some partnerships there to actually get some projects done that have stalled out for whatever reason. So every funding opportunity available, I think, should be on the table for the
Look,
coalition.
I'm confident, if we were up and running right now, I'm confident we could have got NRCS emergency funds. I mean, NRCS, that comes out of farm bill money. And, I mean, they'll do in-kind for contribution. And in-kind could be, you know, we ain't got to match with funds. They just want to help. So let's let them help.
Okay. The last two are the root cause. We have lack of public education and outreach, which we talked a lot about last time. It doesn't require authority, but the entity could provide public education, engagement, and communication. I put yes, right?
Agreed.
And then inadequate data collection and availability, provide data and support. And again, we'll have the watershed models by, hopefully by 2022. Regionally and statewide. So these watershed models will be a resource. I think we need to also think about water storage of those models regionally.
That's pretty easy. We'll put it at Gillis Elementary.
Whatever this entity ends up being, I think the staffing day-to-day function of whoever does the day-to-day for that, it needs to be there. Possibly in partnership with the university, which I know was considered in other places, but
that would be really cool.
These folks that are helping you, the staff are feeding you decisions. Like you want them to be using the model and running scenarios and testing different, hypotheses.
So
okay. What was the last thing on there? Sorry, I don't want to slow you down.
No, we're good. It's 11:30, so what we could. Is there other items on the agenda?
We just want to get an update.
Cool.
Yeah, keep going. Keep going.
Keep going?
Yes, sir.
So.
Think about McFarland's. McFarland's is open again.
Do you want to talk more about what the board would look like?
Say again, sir?
Do you want to talk more about what the board could look like for this, or do you want to save that until to the how? Okay.
I think you save it to the how.
Okay.
'Cause I think we have to digest sort of what we're going to be doing and
Right.
what it's going to look like before you kind of.
Right. And then the other thing that I know we talked about, what's the acronym for Imperial?
MCAL.
MCAL. So what's up with them? Are they?
They're relatively a small entity. It's a lot of transportation planning and things like that. They've had several directors over the last few years, and so I think that's probably been their big sort of hindrance on growth. And then Mike Goyer came along, and so I mean I think the future's bright for them.
Yeah.
That'd
be good.
And they're going to be partners with this, as they are, in different aspects. Is it the right entity to just fully say, you as an existing entity, you take this on? That I'm not so sure of. And it goes back to defining their current goals and objectives, as they are formed as an entity. Do we take them all the way up along the Sabine, as well? How does that look? I don't know.
It'd be a great addition to our technical advisory board.
Okay.
But could they, have something different going on? Can you have sort of two segments to your entity? Could you have your 5 parish MCAL do what they already do, but then have this sort of second half to your entity where your watershed coordinators and your boundaries, your authority is different?
Absolutely. So that's where we talked about the staff being the same, but they just answer to a different board. And so the CEO of that organization would still be a part of it, minimal time billed to it or whatever, but you would have designated staff that's hired specifically to do that. And the beauty of that is that you're not setting up a brand new organization. You're only setting up a new board with existing staff.
Yeah, I like that, because then you just do an MOU between the two, and then so they can use the same staff. Lovely.
But they would have to, it would probably be new staff or
Oh, yeah.
considerable expansion of staff in that existing, organization to be able to do this. I really don't think, I don't know how many people are there, but I think it's a relatively small operation.
Yeah, they're adding folks right now too.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know that it's the right fit for here, but I'd like for the board to consider them at some point because, again, I think that they've got some new leadership. And also, in this region, there are 3 planning and development districts. Kisatchie Delta got left off the sheet for whatever reason. So just keep in mind that Vernon Parish is part of KD, and so is Rapides. So you got CDC up north, Coordinating Development Corporation. I'm about to forget them. And then KD, Kisatchie Delta Regional Planning and Development District, and then MCAL.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. So this next slide is these are questions that were more tailored to thinking about an existing entity. But I guess if there's is there any other questions or comments about this new entity? Like, what does it? Do you want to dive into anything more? Because I think that's kind of we're kind of starting to get into the how, right? And I think there's a whole nother exercise that
I think the distinguished lady from Calcasieu best said it when she said, let's worry about that during the how.
Right.
But I love the fact that, just real quick, I love the fact that we have parish representation, plus we have Coshada, plus we have Cameron. What is it called? Not the parish, but you work for, because we have Miles for Cameron Parish. You're representing something else. You're representing the
floodplain?
At large. Right, but it's coastal, so I love that. Like, I love the way our board, I'd be happy if this same board just went forward, but, that's up to the police juries and other tribe, Coshada tribe and other people, so.
One of the things we did note, I know we're trying to move on, is the Technical Advisory Committee. We thought it would be nice for every entity that does some type of watershed management, everybody on pages 37 and 38, and whoever we forgot, have the option to appoint somebody to the Technical Advisory Committee, which would be massive, but
that's fine.
That way everybody's got a seat at the table. We're not
Right.
completely yanking everything away
And
from
we can lead it to the best decision possible at the board level.
So it's pretty similar to what we did in Calcasieu Parish with our watershed modeling efforts, and I forget the name. We had a watershed or drainage coalition is what and so we would have these big meetings, probably, 40, 50 people in the rooms, and where we'd have Jean and her team come update us on the modeling efforts. So it's just people from planning, our CFMs, our drainage people, just sort of, not anything, not a official technical advisory group, but just to kind of keep everyone informed. And it was a quarterly thing that we did pre-COVID, and it was very informative and very helpful. And so I definitely envisioned something like that, maybe not as large and maybe a little bit more formal, but that was a good thing that we did, and it kept everyone up to speed and gave everyone a chance to give their input.
So part of our work at LWI then is if we're moving in a direction for a new entity, we need to figure out what legislative action needs to happen, and we're going to help you to figure that out. So that's pretty much where the next steps are. We're going to refine these exercise outcomes. If you all want to do this the how exercise in December, I think your next meeting is December 14, I think.
Brad, can I jump in and ask a question as we're thinking about
Yes,
next
please.
steps? This is Evelyn from OCD. I wanted to kind of ask the group, I'm hearing two things that we're considering, right? Like two potential directions here. One would be a brand new entity, does the work to support the coalition. and the other option is some form of coordination with MCAL. And so I'm wondering for y'all, what information do you need to be able to pick one or the other of those two options? Like, would it be helpful for a representative of MCAL to make a presentation to this group?
No.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean, I think we need to get with them. I don't even know if this would be anything that they are interested in doing. You know, I don't know. We
Like,
definitely
you
have
want
to.
gauge that, I think.
Pardon?
It sounds like what I'm hearing from y'all is that you want to kind of gauge their interest. So that's exactly what I'm asking about. That's right.
Yeah.
Do you think that you need a meeting, though, of the steering committee to do that, or is that something that can kind of happen in a few conversations and maybe?
Yeah, who's tight with MCAL in here?
I mean, we can definitely reach out to MCAL. You want to reach out to him?
Love to.
Okay.
Just ask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and present and be prepared to, if you don't mind, sir, to brief on the next in December meeting.
Absolutely
Okay,
happy to
thanks.
do so.
Matt Johns is going to reach out to MCAL and brief us at the next meeting. Does that work, or
That's
should?
great. Thank y'all.
Okay.
Good idea.
How about Sabine River Authority?
Sabine?
Sabine.
On technical advisory committee side, for sure, yeah. I want all these organizations to be able to roll in on technical advisory side. But I'm telling you right now, the board is not going to be about MCAL taking over, because we don't even have a seat at the table in that organization. I mean, real world, you know what I mean? Like on paper we do.
Well, the coalition would be the new board for them, or a separate board. You would just be getting access to their staff and their existing fiscal agent
See, that
status.
would work. But see, it's gotta be, you know, it needs to be a formal courtship, you know what I mean?
Oh yeah, if
Not
he's
a,
interested, he needs to be here trying to convince you guys that they're the right people for the job.
Right.
If I were close enough, I'd be doing the same thing for y'all right
See,
now.
I'm open to that, and I think, you know,
Yeah, if it's a brand new entity, I want to get back to one quick thing that you mentioned earlier, Jacob, that if you have one person, one staff person, a director, a CEO, whatever, that's helping run everything that the board's wishing and technical advisory committee's advising on, coordinating the meeting, they may be contracting on behalf of you guys with multiple engineering firms to make sure that we're getting all the data and information. So you still have access to all your engineers that you want, because one person's not going to know everything.
Right.
But they could be the one point person between the two to keep it flowing between every meeting.
you see that as a board member or as a
No, it'd be it's either going to be a new organization or a division of an existing entity that's
get
going to
it.
be solely set aside to do this.
It's not a horrible idea at all. MCAL. We just don't have a good relationship with them as board or parish. It's like the.
We'll find out if they want to come woo you guys.
Yeah.
Woo us. I'm part of this
Yeah,
too.
well, come
See if
woo
they
me.
want to
Come
woo
woo
us.
me, and I'm all right.
So
Check with them and see, that's about all we can do.
Yes, sir.
You know, if they're either interested or they're not, and
Yeah.
if not, then you're starting over again.
yeah, so we're gonna meet with the watershed coordinators and the fiscal agents across the state for a visioning meeting and to kind of see where everyone's at. So then that's going to be, I think, the first week of December, and we need to put that on your calendars. And then, so we're all going to be much more prepared from like a legal like hopefully from a legal and just logistical and implementation standpoint for the how exercise in December. So we're gonna try to answer the questions that we have from the regions collectively, and then be able to report back to you with what's actually, like, how do we do what we're talking about.
Have any of the other regions made it to exercise 3 yet?
Evelyn or Nicolette, I don't think we're there yet. We have like.
None of them have. Some regions have kind of had supplemental meetings after the WHO to get to, delve into some other issues, but I wouldn't say that any has had the actual how.
Good. That was a setup question for a
has
compliment.
adopted any kind of recommendation at this point.
Got it. For Calcasieu, you guys got us so far ahead that in spite of not meeting since Hurricane Laura till recently via Zoom, that we're still not behind, and that
Right.
is really impressive.
It's
So-
kind of a lesson learned too, though.
Great
Like if we
job,
get an
y'all.
opportunity to get ahead again,
Yeah.
we should probably take it because in 2020 and
Right.
Lord
You guys
knows
set the
what
bar
else is
high for
coming.
QES,
So I
so
think it's a kudos to Calcasieu. man.
absolutely.
That was
Kudos,
all
official kudos to
Alberto's
Calcasieu.
doing, him jumping in
And for
and
Edward for making all the calls and Stephanie.
Now,
Yes,
So
yes.
thank you for rallying.
that was all Alberto Galan jumping in. But again, we had just done this with our drainage districts, and so we had set up new boards. We consolidated them. We had all of these conversations as to who's going to be the entity and to do all of this, and so it worked out very well for us. And he jumped in and just
You'll be presented with a wreath and a hearty handshake. Okay, moving on.
I think Nicolette has
Jennifer,
something. Or Evelyn.
You may have already said something to this, and I apologize if you did, but are there any kind of lessons learned from your drainage district exercise that you could share with the steering committee in terms of maybe, how they were organized, how you, decided to kind of create members? I don't mean to put you on the spot either, but I'm thinking there might be some overlap.
I mean, I think it was really two different situations, to be honest. I mean, legally and sort of, the documentation and all of that was pretty similar, but everybody knew everybody walking into the room, which is totally different than what we're dealing with right now. So we're getting to know each other and each other's needs. It's really two different, it's apples to oranges. So a lot of decisions were able to be made because we kind of already knew where everyone was coming from and each other's issues and needs as they had been brought up and dealt with over many years. We're just learning each other's situations, parishes, legal authorities, everyone's setups, and so that's a little different. There's a lot more work with this. I'll have to say that. So if I think of anything, though, I will definitely pass it on.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We're definitely in a different situation and learning about, the intricacies of the watershed region, which is probably a much broader jurisdiction
But I will say this,
than the drainage district.
the parish as the bigger entity did, I don't know how to describe, I mean, they navigated the whole process. And so it made it a little easier for the drainage districts to kind of get on board and do everything underneath them. So it's very similar to what y'all are doing. I think we just had maybe a little bit more straightforward conversation about what we want this to look like in the end. And that's where I think we're as regional steering committee members and people as part of this, sometimes I think it gets a little blurry as to what it is we're supposed to be achieving at the end of all of this. So that might be the only thing.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
yeah,
all.
there's a lot to figure out.
And we will. And I think our meeting in December will help. So that's all from us. Good job.
C'est bon.
Huh?
Gave you a little French there.
Oh, okay, good.
All right. Well, we have our modelers, statewide modelers here, represent Fence Maker, and I think they're going to give an update on what's been going on that side. So